The Boston Red Sox had an up and down 2024 season, but what exactly would you give them for a letter grade? More on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part of it all is it's all completely free. So you might as well tune in because Locked On is your team every single day. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Welcome to the show. Happy Thursday. We sit here with the Red Sox approaching their final series of the season here against the Tampa Bay Rays at home. And what a season it has been for this Red Sox team. Lots of ups and downs this year. Lots of guys who stepped up that we maybe thought wouldn't. Lots of guys who fell a little bit under expectations, and truly a season plagued with injuries for this Boston Red Sox team. So on today's show, we're going to be going over the season in summary. I'll be giving my official letter grade for this Red Sox season and talking about some biggest surprises that took place along the way, as well as discussing a prospect who's a star in the making in the Boston Red Sox system. So you won't want to miss any of that. And the biggest word that comes to mind when I think of this Red Sox season overall is frustrating, because this team had so much potential going into the season, especially from an offensive standpoint. I mean, it's not like they didn't have guys who could hit. Like, this team could hit, and they fell short of being able to accomplish a lot of the things that Red Sox fans were hoping they could accomplish. I mean, just barely had a better record than last season and the season before that, when they finished with 78 wins and last place in their division. They have at least secured that they won't finish in last place this year. But in terms of everything that went on this season compared to what the conversations were before the season and how the front office was going to go full throttle, it was definitely overall disappointing for sure, because you don't want to have a team that's stuck in the phase of being mediocre every year. You don't want to have a team that is difficult to root for because you don't have the guys in the mix that are giving you the best opportunity to succeed. So overall, there have been a lot of things this year that were frustrating about this Red Sox season. And you look at the injuries. I mean, so many guys plagued with injuries. Trevor going down early in the season, and the infield having to be swapped around a little bit with multiple players kind of rotating their way through into the middle infield and playing second base and shortstop. Then you had Triston Casas, who went down shortly after that with an injury, and he missed most of the season as well. And he obviously was primed for a big season after last year and being in the Rookie of the Year conversation all season long and showing so much potential. So the disappointment there is that I was looking forward to seeing what he could do this year. And I think if he hadn't gotten injured, he would have been a huge part of the Red Sox offense as a whole. And obviously, he learned a lot about how to play defense at first base from having Justin Turner as his mentor last year. And I just think Triston was primed for a big season this year. So that was another big factor in what went wrong for the Red Sox this year. then you had a bullpen that was starting to figure things out right before the All-Star break and then just completely crashed and burned. And the reason the Red Sox fell further and further out of the playoff conversation was a lot due to that bullpen. And then what was frustrating was in the few games that the bullpen was doing its job and not giving up runs, the offense couldn't score. So it was just one frustration after another with this Red Sox team all season long. And the biggest thing for me about this team is that lots of guys who the Red Sox relied on to be the stars of the show did not end up being that. And when you take a look at the Red Sox starting rotation, like, yeah, overall the rotation was pretty good, but they couldn't get guys who were able to eat innings effectively. And you look at James Paxton, who was here for a very brief period of time that the Red Sox traded for and then got hurt in his first outing with the Red Sox and ended up not being able to play the rest of the season. So definitely a mix of things in their control and out of their control. Now, on the flip side of that, we're looking at a team who, going into the year, did have question marks surrounding the pitching staff in particular. And knowing that Tyler O'Neill might have been a great addition to the offense, but we weren't sure if that was going to pan out or how his bat was going to adapt to Fenway. And the Red Sox weren't making these drastic moves like the Yankees went out and got Juan Soto in the offseason, and the Red Sox weren't doing those types of things. So to me, there were a lot of expectations that people had, and some of those were negative expectations. Like some people were saying this team's a complete dumpster fire. They'll easily be in last place again. And did they come relatively close to last place this year? For sure. But I think in a way they surprised us because of the fact that we are even able to have talked about playoffs in the last week of the season, because I don't think going into the year, a lot of people expected that. And that solid 2-month stretch in June and July that the Red Sox had, where they were playing very good baseball and looking like a competent playoff team, that was the team people were getting excited about. And that was the team people wanted to continue to see. And that version of the team was far surpassing expectations that fans and media had. And the Red Sox were elevating on the power rankings that would come out every week from Baseball America or from DraftKings or from anybody who was making power rankings, ESPN. The Red Sox were slowly rising in those rankings, and then they fell back again because they couldn't come through after the All-Star break, and they just started to not play as well. And then they turned into the team that Red Sox fans thought they would be originally. And I think because they won a lot more games than people expected earlier on in the season, when they did start to play more like the team people thought they would be to begin with, it wasn't as much of a surprise to people when they started falling out of the playoff conversation. And because they looked so good earlier on, people were starting to get sold on that being the team. So then when they jumped back into reality, people were like, all right, this is what they are. But because they had played so well early on, it kept them in the playoff conversation because of the fact that they had been winning lots of games. And at one point were 10 games over 500. So if you really think about it, I mean, it's disappointing how much they fell off in the second half after building up all this momentum that they had going for them in the first half. So definitely a little bit of a surprise in terms of just how much the drop-off actually was from the first half to the second. And what were the biggest contributors to that? The bullpen primarily, and the fact that the trade deadline acquisitions that the Red Sox got didn't pan out the way that they planned. And Craig Breslow picked a lane, and he decided he was going to buy at the trade deadline. And he came out and made it very clear that he feels this Red Sox team is worth investing in, and he's going to make the team better at the deadline. So that's what he went out and tried to do. And it's just unfortunate that not one of his trade deadline acquisitions panned out this year. And is Alex Cora to blame? Maybe partly, for sure, because he did make some detrimental mistakes in terms of the management of the bullpen this year. But on the same token, this bullpen was so fatigued because the starters weren't going as deep into the games as we wanted them to be going in. So it put Alex Cora in a tough spot. So there are lots of factors you could point to for this season, and you really have to describe it as a roller coaster because it wasn't much of anything else. Lots of emotions that went into this season and mixed feelings and not really knowing what the identity of this team was for the longest time. But when you consider all of that, what would be the letter grade that you would give this Red Sox season? If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments. But considering all factors, I'm giving this season a solid C. Not good by any means, but not detrimental to the point of where the White Sox are, or like a complete dumpster fire, because it has to be considered that all the way up until the last week of the season, the Red Sox were in the playoff conversation. So that's something that you have to take into consideration when evaluating this season and how it went, and giving this team at least some credit for surprising people and being in a conversation that people thought they had no business being in early on or ever thought they would be in. So I'm giving it a solid C because obviously there were a lot of things that went wrong that I think everybody saw going wrong because of the fact that there were so many holes in the roster prior to the season starting. But also on the same token, giving it a little bit of a higher grade than some people might, just because of the fact that they exceeded some expectations and didn't finish in last place this year and ended up being a relatively better team than people thought, with at least some strides forward and a clearer path to the future, which is something I've talked a lot about on this show, a clearer path to the future and guys who are going to develop and contribute. So I'm giving it a solid C, somewhere in the middle. Definitely needs to be a lot better, but could have also been a lot worse. Just ask the admin of White Sox Twitter, who is cracking me up with all of the different posts every day whenever the team loses and the creative score updates that they give. If you haven't seen that, check it out. By the way, it's so funny. But yeah, I'm giving the Red Sox season a solid C. Let me know what you would give it in the comments. And coming up here, I'm going to be talking about the biggest surprises this season, the good, the bad, the ugly, as they say. So that's coming up next. If you're looking for a fun way to play daily fantasy sports, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Want to play Prize Picks alongside Drewski, Joe Budin, and MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. It is so cool, and you can win tons of money. All you have to do is just download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. I love Prize Picks. You can win so much money and play daily fantasy sports. Like, doesn't that combination all sound so fun? Might as well take advantage of it today. In evaluating overall the Boston Red Sox season for 2024 and everything that encompassed this year, yes, there were frustrations. Yes, there were guys who underperformed, guys who overperformed. And who exactly were those players? Because you look at this team and the ability level of this team, and I think people were holding out hope that the Red Sox would take these massive strides from last year. Because, I mean, I thought at first they had the chance to do that. And I thought hopefully they would exceed expectations by a lot, but I also knew that this pitching staff was going to make or break how the season went. And sure enough, we saw in the entire second half the downfall of this Red Sox team due to the pitching staff to a T. So you see all these issues that went on with this team, but who exactly were the biggest surprises and what? To me, Brian Bayo was a surprise but not in the best way. His first half of the season did not meet expectations at all. He was a pitcher who, in the first half of the year, I had so much hope for going in. I thought after last year, he was trending in the direction of being an ace, and that clearly wasn't the case. And he started to figure things out in the second half, so it does give me hope for next year. But his outings regularly in the first half of the season were not ideal for what you would want to see from a Red Sox starter who had shown all that potential from a season ago. So I definitely didn't expect him to struggle as much as he did this year as a whole. And I definitely, from a pitching staff standpoint, hope to see more strides from Cutter Crawford. I felt like he took a little bit of a step backwards this year overall relative to what we saw from him last year. And even during spring training, he was impressing during his outings. So to me, he took a little bit of a step back instead of a step forward. And that was a conversation I was hoping not to have because I thought he was a guy who definitely had a legitimate shot of being a solid number 2 starter, but now he's more of around a 4 starter, very average pitcher. Could not really get himself on track to the point that I wanted him to this year. Another surprise player that emerged for me this year was David Hamilton, somebody who I didn't think was going to, for one, get as much playing time as he did. That was partly due to Trevor Story's injury and the Red Sox having to do some reshuffling. But the speed that he provided really put him on the map in terms of his value, because he showed that he can be a threat because of his ability on the base paths and his ability to go out there and grind through some at-bats. And even though he wasn't always the person who was making the hardest contact, having him out there, you knew that you were going to score runs and you knew that he was going to steal bases to put himself in runner in scoring position and help out to take some pressure off of whoever was hitting, because if he was in scoring position, then somebody would know, oh, okay, I just need to hit a single to drive him in, as opposed to him always being on first base and creating more pressure for that hitter. So he put a lot of pressure on opposing pitchers, and it really helped me to feel like he might have a more solidified spot on this team than people think, because that speed is incredibly valuable. So utilizing him, Jarren Duran, and Cedar Rafaela and how fast they are is consistently going to be a threat to opposing teams. So I really liked that the Red Sox were able to take that and use it to their advantage. So that was another player who I actually enjoyed watching this year. Did not think that he would have as much of an impact as he did. And I feel like it's because he got more playing time and more reps this year. Whereas last year, we didn't really get to see much from him, and he didn't get to play in a lot of games consecutively, so he didn't really get to get a rhythm going. But he had kind of established himself as that number 2 hitter behind Jarren Duran before he got injured. So he definitely surprised me a lot this year. And Jarren Duran surprised me, but mainly because of how far his development came and as quickly as it did. I knew Jarren Duran had the recipe to succeed. I mean, we saw it last year when he was taking some really good at-bats for this Red Sox team. But I did not expect him to make as much of a leap forward as he did this year when it comes to everything: his logistics, his mechanics, his hitting, his fielding, his ability to steal more bases, his read on the ball. He just does everything with intensity and with a lot of talent. And he's such a threat in multiple areas of his game for this Red Sox team. So I didn't really expect him to surprise us and grow that much this year. I mean, I was excited to watch him. I knew he'd be a good player for this Boston Red Sox team, but I didn't think I'd be sitting here at the end of the year saying he was the Red Sox team MVP. But he was, and he certainly was one of the biggest surprises to come out of this team in 2024. Another surprise for me, at least a player that I hope to see a little bit more from that I didn't in general, was Yoshida. I feel like his first half was very disappointing compared to what we saw towards the end of last year. And I think there's a lot of pressure on him, right? Because he signed this pretty big contract to play in Boston, came in last year as a rookie and was feeling everything out. And now he's in his second year. And people were saying, okay, he has a year under his belt, so he has to be better than he was last year. And in the first half, he wasn't really, but then in the second half, he started to really turn things on. And the guy has actually had a great second half. But is there a consistency problem with him? That's something that I found myself asking all season long that I was hoping to not have to ask. So that was a disappointing thing from this year and a bit of a surprise, because I had thought that after what we saw from him for a lot of last year, that he had maybe tried to fix some things in his swing, or at least his plate approach, and be able to be more effective. So that was definitely another surprise for me. And overall, a surprise in a negative manner for me was the number of strikeouts that this offense had as a whole this year, and just the approach that they took at the plate, because they had double-digit strikeouts as a team in a lot of games this year, and that truly is unacceptable. And that honestly falls on the hitting coach, Pete Fatsi. I don't want to see him with the Boston Red Sox next year. I just think his approach is just not working for these players, and you can't be swinging and missing that much. So to me, the overall offensive approach needs to change. And I'm a little concerned for this offense moving forward if he's still the hitting coach. So the digression that I saw overall from the offense compared to what we've seen over the last few years, and just the inconsistency with the offense, was something that definitely surprised and also disappointed me about a Red Sox team that I felt like had a lot more potential than they showed this season. So lots of surprises for sure this year. I mean, the bullpen as a whole was a surprise just because of how much they struggled in the second half. Guys like Josh Winkowski and Zach Kelly, who both pitched well last year, I felt like they took big steps back this year. So those were surprises to me. And just in general, how the bullpen just could not connect and figure things out was definitely a big disappointment to come out of this year. So that leaves lots of questions that the Red Sox are going to have to be asking themselves this offseason is, okay, so what exactly do we need to do to fix this team? Like, what is that going to entail? And coming up, I'm going to be talking about somebody who might very well help fix this team sooner rather than later. So that's coming up. This episode of Locked On Red Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival's city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's just right for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rivals' cities. I love Booking.com. The number of hotels that I've booked through them is crazy because they give you some great deals on hotel options. So it's allowed me to be able to travel a lot more. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city. Yes, that does include your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Your traveling experience will be so much better if you use Booking.com. I promise you. So check that out today. I am currently looking back on the Red Sox season and everything that went into this season, the disappointments, the highs, the lows, and what exactly happened with this Red Sox team that had so much potential and momentum going into the All-Star break and completely fell off in the second half of the season. So lots of things to think about going into the offseason for this Red Sox team and lots of holes to fill. But somebody to look forward to who's in the Red Sox system right now is Kristian Campbell, making a difference every day in the minors. He was named Baseball America's 2024 Minor League Player of the Year, which is super exciting. And he was named Eastern League MVP. He's joined on the league's all-star team by teammates Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, and Kyle Teal. But with the season coming to a close for minor league baseball programs around the country, awards are now being handed out, and he was named 2024 Eastern League MVP on Tuesday. He's 22 years old and actually started the season in High A Greenville, but was promoted to Double A Portland after just 40 games. He appeared in 56 games for Portland in the Eastern League, hitting .362 with a 1.045 OPS, 8 home runs, 35 RBIs, and 17 stolen bases. So that performance in Double A is what got him the Eastern League MVP title, because he just absolutely crushed it there. And that performance also led to a promotion to AAA Worcester, where he also was impressive. In 19 games, he hit .286 with an .898 OPS, 4 home runs, 17 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases. Campbell and fellow Red Sox prospects Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, and Kyle Teal are all expected to be guys who will come up and contribute to this Red Sox team at the major league level significantly and make a big difference. And these guys are the future. These are the guys that the Red Sox are excited to have in their organization. The Red Sox are hoping this is just the start for Campbell, as he may have an opportunity to compete for the second base job in spring training, which is obviously super exciting. Because when you look at prospects, sometimes you obviously don't know how they're going to pan out or which prospects are going to be around for the long haul. But the Red Sox see a lot in this kid, and they feel like he has the potential to be somebody who can make a difference pretty early on in his career at the major league level. And with the second base job being pretty wide open next year, he has a chance to get that spot, because they have Vaughn Grisham, who hasn't played in very many games at all in the majors this year because he was injured and didn't really get the opportunity to. The Red Sox don't really know where he's at. So I don't know that they'd feel confident having him be the starting second baseman if somebody else plays better than he does. Then you also have guys like Romy Gonzalez, David Hamilton, and Manuel Valdez, which, by the way, Romy Gonzalez, I didn't mention him earlier, but he was another player that really surprised me this year, especially with his ability to be such a good pinch hitter and just come in clutch in those types of situations. So definitely another player to add to the list, as well as Wilyer Abreu in terms of his development and how far he came this year. So the list really does go on, but you have guys like that, Romy Gonzalez and David Hamilton, who also will be fighting for a starting spot on this team. So again, it's a good problem to have. The Red Sox have lots of players who will be in the mix, and it's something that they as an organization will figure out as they go in terms of who fits the mold and will fit into the longer term puzzle and who doesn't necessarily fit into that and fit into what the Red Sox are trying to do and accomplish down the road. So if they think Kristian Campbell already has the opportunity to fight for a second base opening with the major league team, that means they see a ton in him, in that he has a lot of potential, which is super exciting. He's the second Portland Sea Dog selected as an Eastern League MVP. Kevin Millar won it in 1997, and this is also the second time in franchise history that 4 players were selected All-Stars. The last time was in 1997, again, with Lionel Hastings, Mark Kotze, Alex Gonzalez, and Kevin Millar. So this core here, the big 4 in Boston, they're setting a precedent here that we are the future and we're the guys who are going to come up and win you lots of games moving forward. So you have to be really excited about that. And I don't think a lot of people saw Campbell's 2024 season coming, which makes it even more exciting. When he was drafted out of Georgia Tech in the 4th round last year, his scouting report described a slash and dash specialist. He was an under the radar second base selection in every sense of the word. And he appeared on 0 post-draft breakout lists and did not rank among the Red Sox preseason top 30 prospects. Now, here we are less than a year later, and he stands alone as the Baseball America Minor League Player of the Year and one of the top 25 prospects in the sport. He was the obvious choice, especially in a season filled with injuries and disappointing performance among many of baseball's best prospects. And the fact that he climbed from High A Greenville to AAA Worcester that quickly and improving his results at each level just shows how good he really was. He ended up having a final stat line of a 330 batting average, 439 on base percentage, and 558 slugging. And he hit 20 home runs and stole 24 bases in 115 games. He also had a WRC plus of 180, which was the best marker in the minors in 2024. It's not common for somebody to have that quick of a rise as he had, but he quickly immersed himself in Boston's bat speed training program over the offseason and altered his bat path, which allowed for him to make a greater impact at better angles to ultimately optimize ball flight. So he used the assistance of coaching and challenge-based training environments embraced by the Red Sox staff to allow him to grow tremendously even heading into the season. So this is very exciting. This is somebody you certainly need to keep an eye on moving forward as the Red Sox start to navigate through what's going to hopefully be a very productive offseason for them. So lots of things to be excited about. I know it was a frustrating season this year for Red Sox fans, but hopefully they do big things this offseason and next year will be less frustrating. While you're at it, don't forget to check out Locked On MLB, a show with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully. He will give you the latest in all things going on around the league. So if you want to keep up with what's going on with other teams, that is the place for you. You can get that show wherever you get your podcasts. It's super fun. I highly recommend it, especially going into the postseason. As always, keep the faith no matter what. Go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.